what's your assessment of the current state of the Cavs?
Well, one of the things that we really benefited from was we were in a historically bad Eastern Conference. And all through those years, we really knew the target is the Western Conference team. There was nobody in the East who was really going to be in the way.
Yeah, right. The East was the LeBron Invitational for all of those years.
That now.
David Griffin may have just shaken the entire GOAT debate with one interview. The former Cleveland Cavaliers GM, the man who helped build the 2016 championship roster around LeBron, openly admitted something critics have been saying for years. The Eastern Conference during LeBron's 8 straight finals runs wasn't just weak, it was historically bad. 8 straight finals appearances sounds untouchable. Legendary. Unmatched. But when you hear that LeBron faced only one All-NBA first-team player in the East across those 8 years, the narrative starts to shift. Suddenly, the dominance doesn't look quite the same. And this isn't coming from a hater. It's coming from someone who was actually in the building.
LeBron James is a fraud. LeBron James, once again, proves that he's a pat-standing clown and should never again ever be mentioned in the same breath as the greats who have ever played this great game that we call National Basketball Association basketball.
So here's the real question. Do LeBron's 8 straight finals still feel historic knowing the Eastern Conference was that weak? Or does this confirm he took the easiest possible path during those years? Drop your take below.
David Griffin was the general manager of the Cleveland Cavaliers throughout the whole stay, the second stint of LeBron James in Cleveland, when he came back from Miami up until the time that he left to the Lakers. Now, he's being asked about the current Cleveland Cavaliers team and, to acknowledge them and how great they are and all that other stuff. But during the answer to that question, he started talking about those years of the second stay of LeBron James and how lucky they were because the Eastern Conference was probably the easiest Eastern Conference in the history of the NBA.
Let's break down exactly what David Griffin said. This is the former GM of the Cleveland Cavaliers, the executive who worked directly with LeBron James, the architect of the 2016 title team. Griffin said, "One of the things we really benefited from was we were in a historically bad Eastern Conference. All through those years, we really knew the target is the Western Conference team. There was nobody in the East who was really going to beat us." Read that again. The general manager admitted they weren't worried about the East at all. For 8 straight seasons, the mindset wasn't, how do we survive the conference? It was, who are we seeing from the West in June? Griffin even called it. The East was the LeBron Invitational. That's not a meme. That's not Twitter trolling. That's LeBron's own GM saying the conference playoffs were basically a formality. Show up. Advance. Prepare for the real challenge out west.
I think what ended up happening ultimately along the way was it changed our perspective to such a degree that you saw us, even the first year we were together, I think we were 19-20 in our first 39 games, and then we run off this historic run in the second half of the season, but guys weren't taking the season seriously.
And then it got even more interesting. Griffin compared those LeBron years to the current Cavaliers team led by Donovan Mitchell. He said if this current Cavs team reaches the finals, it would be more impressive than LeBron's 8 straight runs. Why? Because the Eastern Conference is significantly more competitive now. Think about that. The same executive who helped build LeBron's dynasty is saying today's Eastern Conference gauntlet would mean more than what LeBron navigated back then. He also admitted that during those years, players didn't take the regular season seriously. One season they started 19-20 through 39 games. Why would they push? They already knew nobody in the East could beat them in a 7-game series. The regular season wasn't survival. It was maintenance.
A violation. So they'll do it again. You know, in those plays, and that was on LeBron James, those plays often go unnoticed. He makes this shot, you know, people will forget about it. These are the type of plays in this tight of series that can make the difference between winning or losing.
Now let's talk numbers, because this is where it gets uncomfortable. Across those 8 finals runs, LeBron faced only one All-NBA first-team player in the Eastern Conference playoffs. 1. In 8 years. That's not narrative. That's data. During that era, the Eastern Conference All-Star teams included players like Kyle Korver, a 34-year-old elite shooter, but not a primary star. Pau Gasol, representing the Chicago Bulls late in his career. Meanwhile, the West was stacked with MVP-level talent year after year. The imbalance wasn't subtle.
There was no part of me that believed we were losing. And it was one of those things that I just believed to the core of me, but it was because I felt like the only way we could win was to dig the hole we dug. That group needed it to be like that.
That's wild, isn't it?
For whatever reason, they were so spoiled by success and needed it to be so damn difficult. They put themselves in a position that only they could overcome. But that was the greatness of that group. They lived for make it messy.
The talent gap between conferences became so noticeable that even all-star games turned into mismatches. Year after year, the West overwhelmed the East with star power. Eventually, the league scrapped the traditional format and switched to a draft-style system, Team LeBron versus Team Curry, instead of East versus West. Because the imbalance had become impossible to ignore. So when people cite 8 straight finals as the ultimate proof of dominance, Griffin's comments force a different conversation. Was it unprecedented greatness? Or was it dominance in a historically watered-down conference? That's the debate.
What Ty Lue did at halftime to challenge LeBron, there's going to be a 30 for 30 on that moment and what it really did to LeBron. He was the best of his angels that second half in a way that he couldn't have been without Ty Lue. And Ty knew it. And to have the gift he had at that moment for handling that situation. And then for our locker room to deal with Ty Lue going at him the way they did and to redirect LeBron to get the benefit out of it, that's a James Jones thing. That's a Channing Frye thing. That's an RJ thing. That's a J.R. Smith thing. That's a, look, man, is he right?
When people talk about LeBron James' 8 straight NBA Finals appearances, most think of dominance. 8 finals in a row? Incredible. Legendary. Consistent. But let's take a closer look, because David Griffin, the former Cleveland Cavaliers GM who built the 2016 championship team, just revealed details that completely change how we should view those finals runs. How LeBron stacks up against other legends. Let's compare LeBron to some of the greatest playoff performers in NBA history. Michael Jordan beat 20 teams with 50 or more wins during his playoff career. Every opponent was battle-tested and a legitimate threat. Kobe Bryant beat 26 teams with 50-plus wins, still the all-time record. And he did it without another top 75 all-time teammate. LeBron James? He has been in the league longer than the number of 50-win teams he has beaten in the playoffs. That's not a typo, his longevity exceeds his victories over high-quality playoff teams. Kobe is the only player ever to beat 4 50-win teams on the way to a single championship. LeBron has never done that, because the Eastern Conference never had enough strong teams for him to face. During LeBron's 8-year finals run, the East might have had 2 or 3 50-win teams in a good season. Meanwhile, in the West, 50 wins barely guaranteed a playoff spot. The 8th seed in the West would often have been a top 3 seed in the East. That shows how massive the gap was. LeBron's path of least resistance. Griffin's comments validate what critics have been saying for years. LeBron chose the easiest possible path to the finals. First, he went to Miami, joining forces with 2 other All-Stars, while the East was historically weak. When that era began to crumble, he returned to Cleveland, where the Eastern Conference still offered almost no real resistance. This wasn't luck or coincidence. This was calculated career management. And it worked. LeBron's Eastern Conference playoff performances were far stronger than his finals performances against Western Conference teams, simply because he faced inferior competition in the first 3 rounds. The Eastern Conference competition. Let's break down who LeBron really faced in the East during those years. Derrick Rose, coming off an ACL and meniscus injury. Indiana Pacers, with Paul George but little supporting cast. Toronto Raptors, a team infamous for choking in the playoffs. Boston Celtics, with an aging core that was past its prime. These were good regular season teams, but they were not legitimate championship contenders. They crumbled against true stars. Griffin even mentioned that one year Toronto managed to win, and he credited it more to the city, the crowd energy, and the atmosphere than to the team itself. That illustrates how weak the competition was. Even the second-best team in the East became a joke, swept or gently swept by LeBron. The Eastern playoffs weren't competitive, they were almost ceremonial. Everyone knew LeBron would reach the finals. The only real question was how many games his opponent might last. Facing real competition in the finals. 8 straight finals sounds impressive, but when you finally face Western Conference teams who earned their way there, LeBron went 3-5. He lost more often than he won. Compare that to Michael Jordan, 6-0 in the finals during a much more competitive era. Kobe Bryant, who faced multiple 50-win teams in every playoff run and still won 5 championships. LeBron's path through the East was objectively easier, and his finals record reflects what happens when he actually faces serious contenders. Behind the scenes, working with LeBron. Griffin also revealed the immense pressure of working with LeBron. He felt compelled to trade future assets and overpay players just to meet LeBron's short-term expectations. The stress was so overwhelming that Griffin admitted he wanted to leave even after winning a championship. Think about that. The GM who built a title-winning team was exhausted and frustrated. That says a lot about what it's like working behind the scenes with LeBron. LeBron also receives all the credit for wins, but rarely takes responsibility for losses. Wins equals LeBron is great. Losses equals teammates or coaches failed. That narrative has protected his image for years, but Griffin's statements are starting to show the full picture. Strategic career management. LeBron has consistently chosen the path that maximizes his chance of winning while minimizing difficulty. Miami, team up with 2 other All-Stars. Cleveland, return when the East was weak. Lakers, demand a trade for Anthony Davis. Strategically smart? Absolutely. But it means you cannot claim greatest of all time purely based on finals appearances when the path was deliberately optimized. Compare that to Kobe Bryant. He stayed in the Western Conference his entire career, faced multiple 50-win teams every playoff run, and won championships without top-tier teammates. Consistency versus competition. Fans often cite LeBron's 8 straight finals as proof of consistency and dominance. But Griffin's remarks reveal a key point, that consistency was built on historically weak competition. It's like being the smartest person in a room of high school dropouts. Sure, you dominate that room, but that doesn't measure skill in a more competitive environment. LeBron's 3-5 finals record against true contenders tells the story. When he couldn't coast through the weak East, he struggled. That's the real measure of performance.